Joining us right now is the former Chief of Staff under President Obama, Bill Daley. Bill, good to see you.
Thanks, Bria.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Sure.
What do you look at as most important as we await results out of this New York primary? What are you going to be gauging in terms of navigating this?
Well, I think, assuming the two hometown candidates win, Hillary and Mr. Trump, if Hillary wins, the real question is what's the tone of Bernie Sanders? Because it will be pretty obvious that mathematically it's impossible for him to get the nomination. Does he continue with the harsh sort of tone at her, or does he then begin to pivot to more on the issues and less on attacking her? Now they filed a charge with the federal election laws saying that her fundraising is illegal or something. Does that continue? If it doesn't, it gives her the opportunity 3 months before the Republicans decide, and they will go to Cleveland and decide there who their nominee is, gives her an enormous advantage to take on the Republicans early and not be kept being dragged back by Bernie Sanders.
Does it tell us anything about the general election, the strength that we're seeing from folks like Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton in New York?
Not just in New York, around the country.
Yeah.
I think there's a heck of a lot of interest because there's a heck of a lot of anger out there that both Trump and Sanders talks to about what's going on with the economy. But remember, the electorate in the general election is a very different electorate. These turnouts are relatively low compared to what's going to come out in the general election. It's a very different electorate. So it's not as left for the Democrats, and it's not as right for the Republicans when you get to a general election. And that's a major shift that has to happen for all the candidates, whoever the nominees.
Could we talk about the right for a second? Because Donald Trump has finally, I guess, alluded to what his nickname will be for Hillary Clinton, and he has said that that would be Crooked Hillary,
right,
as he's already started to
Well,
use.
she called him the donkey of the decade.
Correct.
Right.
What does a general election matchup look like if we see Donald Trump go head-to-head with Hillary Clinton?
It'd probably be analogous to the Gong Show that used to be on a few years ago. I mean, that seems to be the tenor right now, especially with Trump, and that's started last July or whenever he announced the candidacy. But remember, the American people who vote in the general election for president take this very seriously. This sort of show we've seen on both sides in the primaries, you're talking to a relatively small group of people that participate in the primaries compared to the general election. And people do look for experience, attitude. Can they really see them as President of the United States being the world leader?
Yeah.
And that's what the president is? That's a big challenge for Donald Trump.
So, Mr. Secretary, I have to tell you, I think candidly the notion that Bernie Sanders might start talking about policy is wishful thinking. You know, his crowds are growing. They're not shrinking. His money is growing. His bank account is growing. He's continuing to raise tens of millions of dollars.
Yeah, no.
I don't think Hillary Clinton is going to have a quiet 3 months between now and the Democrat nomination. I think what do you do with Bernie Sanders is going to be the big question.
Well, I think there's going to have to be, he's going to have to define what he needs from the party and what he needs in concessions or whatever he's concerned about. He talks in generalities, you're right, about the revolution. Well, but don't forget, this is a guy who's never been in the Democratic Party. I don't think he's ever been to a convention.
But he's a movement candidate, and Hillary Clinton is quite the opposite. I just think the challenge for Democrats is what do you do with Bernie? I think it's going to be a real problem.
Well, I think she's addressing a lot of the issues that Bernie wants to talk about. And in a general election, it won't be like right now you have a fight over whether the minimum wage ought to be $12 or $15. In the general election, it will be Republicans saying, many of them, don't raise the minimum wage.
Right.
So that's a big advantage for her. Not that she's fighting over 12 or 15, but she's fighting whether you leave it at $7.95 or you take it to 12 or 15.
Yeah, that's a good
big
point.
Advantage.
Let me get your